There it goes through. All right. We are live. And with that, welcome everyone to the Dynasty Wire. My name is Ivan Herrera. I'm joined alongside my good friend, Mr. Spencer Smith. And we have a fun episode for you. We have a lot to review. First and foremost, we're going to kick it off with some news around the NFL. And then we're going to get into a Would You Rather quarterback edition. So we're really excited because we're going to discuss two different quarterbacks, and we're going to share a scenario of which one would we rather have in dynasty format. So it should lead to a great conversation. And then we're going to go ahead and land the plane and end it with our verse of the week. But with that, Spencer, how's it going, dude?
Sir. Hey man, doing good, doing good. Had a good weekend. Went back to like my wife's back to really our home city where my wife's family's at, and we spent the weekend with them and
Nice.
just had a really good time. And then this morning we decided, you know what, we're gonna start. We've we've really wanted to get into like working out in the morning rather than working out which is last year and pretty much every year before that, that's what I would do. But
Right.
probably since like October, I've just gotten either lazy or used to just working out in the afternoon. Like either I
Right.
don't work out at all because I didn't work in the morning, or I'll decide I want to work out and it's a little bit later in the day. And personally, like a lot of my friends, they work out in the afternoon or the evening and they love it. But
Mm-hmm.
I haven't, I don't know. I like working up in the morning and getting back in the habit of waking up in the morning because then I'm ready for the rest of the day.
Right.
Tend to sleep better too because I don't want to be taking either pre-workout or an energy drink hours before I'm going to go to bed, because even
Right.
though I'll fall asleep, I'm not sleeping as good as in the morning. All that to say, got up
Right.
this morning at like 5:30 in the morning, our time, and got to working out. And also because last week's episode, I think I had said this before we started recording, it was either last week's episode or it was the episode before that. I can't remember. It may have been the episode before that. I had to get off a little early because we were
Mm.
trying to get these 5Ks. It's called like Run Disney. And so
Yes.
it was something that we wanted to do a couple of years ago. And we actually were in two different, it was one 5K and one 10K at Disney. So you get to run the park before the park opens, and you get this medal and you get these shirts and you get water bottles and stuff like that. Like it's pretty cool. And then COVID happened, and so we never actually got to run it. But they went ahead
Right.
and sent us our medal as if we did. So that was pretty nice. But we signed up for it again a couple weeks ago for January, next January. So we're just trying to get back into running shape. So, but man, how have you been? How was your weekend?
It's pretty good, man. So here in Southern California, we had kind of a rainy weekend, which is a little bit rare for us, but no, it was great, man. Actually, the one thing that was a little bit different was that I had to deal with pink eye, which was not necessarily
Ooh.
the most fun, but I forgot how quick it actually goes. But I
Mm.
also realized how contagious it really is because my youngest got it, but thankfully we were able to power through and we were just fine. So,
Mm.
and then what else? Just a lot of work around the house. I
Yeah.
was able to stay thankfully home Friday to
Nice.
to help recover, but that also means that I'm still working here at the house doing chores or my honey-do list that the wife gives me. But thankfully, man, everything is all going well. And yeah, just getting ready for this podcast. And I have some other things that I'm doing on the side that I was talking to you about as well with my own
Absolutely.
personal stuff that we're doing.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Can't wait for
man, a
that. I
lot.
won't spoil it for those out there, but Ivan's got some stuff cooking, man. Ivan's got some stuff cooking.
Yes. Yes, sir,
But
we do. And with that, man, I think it's a good opportunity for now. Let's get into some news, man. What do we
yes,
have going
sir.
on around the NFL?
Yeah, so we'll start here. Jared Goff is expected to receive a contract extension worth 45 to 50 million dollars per Jeremy Fowler, ESPN. Goff is entering the final year of his contract, and the Lions intend to reward him. So I love this. The story of Jared Goff is absolutely incredible. Very, from the same draft class, it's the very opposite of the counterpart Carson Wentz. We saw with Carson Wentz, he gets that big, massive contract from Philly, and then, he leads them. And now, of course, that MVP season, well, would have been MVP season for Carson Wentz. Ultimately, Tom Brady wins because Carson Wentz can't play the last 3 games of the season. They end up going to the Super Bowl, and good old Nick Foles wins it all for him. The opposite happens early on in Jared Goff's career, where he leads the Rams to the Super Bowl. They lose in personally, from in my lifetime and all the Super Bowls I have personally watched, the worst Super Bowl I've ever seen in my life. Um, They lose. It's, Jared Goff isn't the guy. We'd much rather have Matthew Stafford. Now, of course, Matthew Stafford comes to a team that Jared Goff just left, and leads them to the Super Bowl. They win it. And we see what's happened ever since, right? The Rams decided they were going to go all in. They definitely did, and they have very much paid the price. They have gotten incredibly lucky with draft picks, Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, so on. Gotten incredibly lucky. But the point of this story is Jared Goff going to the Lions and essentially, honestly, his career being over. When he goes to the Lions, the career for Jared Goff, essentially, if Matthew Stafford couldn't get it done in Detroit, what in the world makes you think Jared Goff is going to get it done in Detroit? But the difference was this was going to be a different team that none of us at the time had seen what was going to happen with Jared Goff and his career on the Lions happen. And now to seeing him at the point of being able to receive a contract of $45 to $50 million guaranteed, probably, if I had to guess, it would probably be something similar to like Kirk Cousins, where it's a 4-year deal and 3 of them are guaranteed with the option of getting out in the 4th year if he's not playing as well. I would think it's something like that, because it's not going to be something like Baker Mayfield where it's, $45 million, but not that that's what Baker's getting paid, but it's 3 years with 2 of them guaranteed. I think it would be a little more. I think it would be something where it's like 3 years guaranteed, maybe 4, all of it guaranteed. I don't know, but I definitely think that Jared Goff is worth this contract with what he has been able to do on this team. This team, it was incredible last season. It was incredible the season before where they started turning everything around a little too late, but they started turning everything around. Ivan, what do you think of the possibility of Jared Goff getting a $45 to $50 million contract on the Lions?
Well, I think it's a contract that he has well deserved. And I think, just like you said, this is a situation where this system and this coaching staff has tailored this offense perfectly to Goff's skill set. And it's one where it doesn't really require a lot of his involvement because they have so many weapons. And like you said, for the Rams, the Lions have also had some picks that have worked out for them. Beginning with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta has been phenomenal. And I know that we're still, the jury is still on Jameson Williams, but there's a lot of good weapons there. And then, of course, you have the signing of David Montgomery being a home run last season. Plus, you add Jahmyr Gibbs as well. So this offense and this team in general, has been so easy to rally around that head coach as well. Who doesn't love Dan Campbell, right? That entire coaching staff, and then you have Ben Johnson as their OC, and all that to say that, of course, Jared Goff is well deserved, and he's also raved about how he's had a rejuvenized career there with obviously there with the Lions after his departure with the Rams. And going back to just to Carson Wentz, it's so unfortunate how these paths have just completely trailed off very differently, because we all thought that the Carson Wentz trajectory was going to continue to rise. And then it's amazing how the NFL can just really shift, whether it's because of injury, circumstance. And I was one of the guys that also wrote off Goff, like, okay, Goff has been a bust.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
To your point,
of course,
too,
also going to Detroit,
Yeah.
it's the same thing as if your quarterback goes to Cleveland, right? Like the narrative is, oh, they're being sent. And back in the day, it was the Vikings. Like,
yeah,
if you go to the Vikings, oh, your quarterback, you're being sent to die. Like, this is the end of your career. And I think that we're about to see it. You mentioned Jameson Williams. I think this season we're going to see a pretty much like a prove it type year out of Jameson Williams from this coaching staff too. Like, all right, it's been 2 years. You're going to have to show us something this year. And Dan Campbell has spoken highly of him. Why wouldn't you? He's your player, but I don't know, man. We'll see.
And I think also Jameson Williams, I don't mean to trail off too much, but he was drafted under that Dan Campbell the coaching staff, right?
First round. I can't remember if they traded up or not for him, but I know that he was like, the issue with Jameson Williams, and kind of like you said, not to trail off too much, the issue was pre his injury in that draft class, no doubt was the number 1 receiver in that draft class. Yeah. And then, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that's the same draft class that Drake London was in. I think. I think so. I think so. I don't know. Why don't you
We'll
look
have
that up
someone
while
fact
I'm
check you.
while I'm talking
Yeah.
about this? Yeah, fact check me. Fact
Yeah.
check me. I think it's the same draft class that Drake London was in, but either way, you know, Jameson Williams was 100% the best receiver in that draft class before his injury. I don't know if this is just post-injury, he's not going to be the same. And for 2 years, like, we've had the sample size to see that, and we need to get over that and, like, understand this is him now. I don't know this. We might go into this year, and he might prove us all wrong. He's built like Devonta Smith, but he's not. He's fast. Like, he's straight line fast. But you talk about trying to really do a lot of stuff in the slot, as in, in the route running. He's not the smoothest route runner anymore. And again, we might see this change coming into year 3. But as far as he's not as dynamic as a Devonta Smith, like I said, he's fast. But to me, this year is really that prove it year, because if we come out of year 3 and it's not much different, and I'm not saying much different as a total box score, seeing what his numbers were at the end of the year. If he comes out and he only plays 8 games, but in those 8 games, we're able to see that there are top 10 finishes, even just top 15 finishes for 5 of those 8 games, that is a lot more than we've seen in 2 years. But,
Right.
I digress.
And then real quick, one last thing. You were right. Jameson Williams as well as Mr. Drake London were in the exact same draft class. Drake London was picked 8th overall by Atlanta, and then you had Jameson Williams picked 12 right after Garrett Wilson as well as Chris Olave.
Yeah. Very stacked class that one was.
Very, very stacked class.
And even I remember too, because Olave and Garrett Wilson were like, who's the best? I remember this kind of happening during that draft of like, who's the best receiver out of y'all two? And they both agreed it was Jackson Smith and Jigba was like the better one in their whole wide receiver room. So kind of funny how their paths are kind of, just because of where they were being drafted, how their paths are kind of going. But
right.
Yeah, pretty solid. All right. Up next year, the New England Patriots are having dinner with Michigan QB JJ McCarthy, or they had dinner with him last night, and are hosting him for a visit today. So JJ McCarthy, I mean, I saw a thing. I didn't really want to bring it up too much. I saw another thing that it's possible he could go number 2 overall. I'm not buying into it. I'm not going to believe it. But JJ McCarthy, I definitely think is going to be overhyped enough to go. Gosh, man, he could go 3 overall. I'd actually feel better for Drake May so that he doesn't have to go to New England. But the further Drake May goes down the board, the luckier some team is going to get. That's what I know. Some team will get lucky.
Hey, but do you really think though McCarthy 3rd overall? That's pretty nuts. How much he skyrocketed in his draft capital.
Nuts. I don't think he should go number 3 overall. I mean,
yeah.
Just a couple of months ago, he was a fringe first-round pick, like 20s at best. Then he's in the teens. Then he could be top 10. Then the odd shift to him going number 2 overall, which I'll get to the Commanders here in a second. But man,
yeah.
I don't think a lot of people are comparing this to like the Zach Wilson rise and that he is Zach Wilson 2.0. And I think one of those two things are true. I think this is very, very media similar to the rise of the pre-draft stock of Zach Wilson. That's what I'm seeing with JJ McCarthy. Do I think that he is Zach Wilson 2.0 from just like an ability standpoint? I do not. I think he is way better than Zach Wilson. But I don't think that he is number 2, number 3. I don't even think he's top 10. I don't. But he will be. That's what I'm saying. That's what he will be, a top 10 pick in this draft, because he is being so hyped up. I think he's a winner. I think he's got really, he's got good abilities, but he's one of those players. He will not overcome the circumstances he is put in. He needs to be good he needs to be placed in a really good situation, which is why I think he would benefit from going later in the draft, especially to a team, for example, like the Vikings. Imagine him going to the Vikings. I don't think for fantasy that means, all right, now we're back to Justin Jefferson's going to be relevant regardless who his quarterback is. But now we're back to also Addison being very relevant. I don't think that's the case, but I do think real NFL-wise, McCarthy would have a much better chance at succeeding if he were to go to a team like the Vikings rather than going to a team like the Commanders or the Patriots. They are that high for a reason. The Bears are lucky. The Bears would be 9 overall. The Bears would not be 1 overall. They're 1 overall because the Panthers are god awful. This is bad. I don't like JJ McCarthy going to the Patriots or the Commanders.
And I think that overall the consensus is that we don't think that any quarterback will succeed right now with New England. I would much rather see McCarthy, like you said, in a Kevin O'Connell situation there with Minnesota, considering that you already have an infrastructure there. Even if there's question marks around what's going to happen with JJ, you still got Jordan Addison, and they just signed Aaron Jones, and their offensive line is okay. So, I mean, that's a pretty good situation compared to that of New England. But for me, it's just amazing how the rise has really gone out of hand, in my opinion, and it sounds like you're agreeing as well with McCarthy, even though we don't think he's necessarily a bad quarterback, but we don't think that he's warranted the hype that he's been earning to be a top 3 QB, being drafted. Oh, did we lose Spencer? It says your mic has been unmuted. Let me see if I can help you out on my end. Oh, got some technical difficulties. Let me go ahead and see what's going on here. Right here. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and let Mr. Spencer go ahead and click back out, and then we'll have you come back in, see if that helps. Oh, hold on. Thought I heard something. Yep, we're good. Okay, we are back.
There we go. I don't know what happened.
No worries. Here, let me make sure that you're all set. No worries, and everyone, please excuse us here. All right, go ahead and keep going, Mr. Spencer. I think you sound good.
All right, yeah, but so I think it's easy right now for all of us to basically kind of believe that none of these quarterbacks, especially early on, are going to do very good with Washington or New England. Somebody's going to eventually. But I think it's got to be somebody who can overcome these terrible situations, and that's not a J.J. McCarthy. I do believe that is a Drake May. I know that Drake May's numbers aren't necessarily too much better than Jayden Daniels this past year, but literally both of Jayden Daniels' receivers are going to be drafted in the first round. Mm-hmm. And look at Drake May's receivers. None of them are going to be drafted in the first round. No running back's going to be drafted in the first round. No offensive lineman I don't think is going to be drafted in the first round. Like, he doesn't have what Jayden Daniels had around him. Now, that's not to say that because of that Drake May is better than. All I am saying is that I believe Drake May has that ability to overcome these circumstances. He's still my QB2 in this draft, although I don't think he's going to go number 2 overall anymore. I think it's been slided too much in the favor of Jayden Daniels, especially because of – now, I do think he's just the messenger, but especially because of Adam Schefter. So moving on here, Adam Schefter tells Commanders fans that he thinks they can already start ordering Jayden Daniel jerseys. So he has been believing so much that Jayden Daniels is going to go number 2 overall to the Commanders that he's saying, y'all might as well go ahead and start ordering him. So that's pretty crazy to me. Rashee Rice turned himself into police a few days ago. Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers thought that his career was over after he tore his Achilles. He told the I Can Fly podcast, saying, quote, I was really thinking that this is it. You don't come back from this injury. I had this incredible offseason experience in a new city, in a new town with new teammates, a new organization, an owner for the first time, and really falling back in love with the game that I first fell in love with when I was 5 years old. And it was absolutely beautiful and special and deep and rich and yummy and just incredible. And then one of the most heartbreaking nights of my life when I played 4 plays, talk about an ego death. So definitely coming very close, although thankfully he's not, but coming very close to just saying, just walking away from the game. Michael Penix Jr. is the best pure passer in the entire draft, says RG3. Wild. So Brandon Ayuk unfollowed the 49ers. Then it was reported that Brandon Ayuk has requested a trade. Then it was reported Brandon Ayuk's agent has denied a report that his client has requested a trade from the 49ers. Now, I don't know what to believe anymore because this entire thing is lying season with him and T. Higgins, who was also reported has requested a trade. Then on the same day, I believe even in the same hour, the Bengals have made it clear behind the scenes that they have no plans to trade star T. Higgins. And Star T. Higgins says that he's expected to stay in Cincinnati and play this season for the Bengals. Literally within the same hour or 2 hours that Brandon
Right.
Ayuk's agent came out and denied a trade request. So when this came out that Brandon Ayuk has requested a trade, unfollowed the 49ers, all this stuff, I'm immediately texting friends. I'm immediately texting group chats like, this is going to be a draft day trade. And I think T. Higgins is going to be a draft day trade too. What has more leverage? It being out in the open that the player has requested a trade and doesn't want to be on the team, or that the player probably does still want to be with the team. So if you want him, you're going to have to pay a little bit more for him.
Right.
The second. So, of course, they're going to want their agent. They're going to want the team. They're going to want whatever they can to come out and say, no, we're good. So I'm not saying that the agent is lying. I'm not saying the team is lying. I'm not saying that Ayuk is lying. All I'm saying is somebody with Ayuk, with T. Higgins, with the Bengals, with the 49ers, with agents, somebody's lying. I do still believe that a draft day trade could 100% happen. I'm not saying it will happen, but at this point, that's when I think the trade is going to happen. If either one of these players get traded, I don't think it's going to be before. Don't think it's going to be after the draft. I think it would be because Cincinnati is wanting to move up or something. 49ers are wanting to move up. Whatever it is, I believe that a trade would happen on draft day. Ivan?
Right. Yeah. And this was nuts because we saw the agent then deny that these reports weren't true. And there's a guy I follow, his name is Smitty. He was getting roasted on this because he had posted that the whole Brandon Ayuk trade request was official. And then you hear like shortly after the agent denies it and he's getting roasted for all fake news. And I'm thinking, man, the guy's just reporting what's being out there. And unfortunately for him, it's really inconsistent. And it's, just like you said, this is just lying season, not just for the draft, but we're just seeing guys just trying to get leverage in terms of getting money for their contract, which we're not mad about. Just that these things are very, if anything, fluid. So it's hard to really gain traction. But, this is just part of the negotiation process. And I think, just real quick, do you think what's more likely to happen? Brandon Ayuk getting traded or T. Higgins getting traded?
Probably Brandon Ayuk. I think that whatever the value is that the Bengals have for T. Higgins, I think would be significantly higher than what the 49ers would have on Brandon Ayuk. Also, the GM, the head coach, there's been so many people from the Bengals openly, every time a rumor comes out, they want to defend the fact that we want T. Higgins, or if you want a player like T. Higgins, you go draft one. Like, you're not getting them from us. So that's not to say they're not going to trade him. I just think if a player was going to be traded, I do believe it would be probably Brandon Ayuk before T. Higgins. But
yeah,
I want Brandon Ayuk to get traded. I want him to get traded to. I love the offense he's in, but I would just love him to get traded. I don't know who. It'd be cool if he got traded to the Falcons. I think with Kirk Cousins, that would be awesome. I think obviously this wouldn't happen. But
Pittsburgh was another one too?
I think maybe. I think the Bills would be a good option if he went to the Bills. They don't have anybody but Curtis Samuel right now. But then again, they've got this draft class is deep, so don't know. But it'd be cool to see him go there. It'd be cool to see him go to the Chiefs, of course, always. But I don't know. I think that it would be fun to see him traded. And don't get me wrong, I love him in San Francisco, but as long as Debo is there, he will always be the first option. And for fantasy and for what I paid to trade for him this past offseason, my personal biasness is wanting him to get traded somewhere so I get a little more bang for half of my soul getting ripped out of me. But I digress. So a couple last things here, and then we shall move on. Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Russell Wilson believes that he opened up a lot of doors and paved the way for other African-American quarterbacks such as Patrick Mahomes. He told Outkick, quote, "For me to be able to go back-to-back Super Bowls and win one of them, I think opened up a lot of doors. Now you see guys like Patrick Mahomes who won it. It's really just us so far, but there's more to come." So I don't know. I kind of read that at first and was like, bro, what are you talking about? Until I read the rest of it where he's just clearly talking about, or maybe because it's the only way this would make sense, Super Bowls. Because outside of that, Bro, what are you talking about? Michael Vick, Randall Cunningham. I mean, the list could go on. What are you talking about? Donovan McNabb. But you were the one who opened up a lot of doors and paved the way for African American quarterbacks. If you're just talking Super Bowls, maybe. If you're talking regular season and the fact that we've seen a lot of them succeed in the NFL, I don't think that Russell Wilson was the pioneer or helped open up a lot of those doors.
No.
What is your thoughts on hearing that? But immediately I'm just like,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Russell Wilson for me now seems so cringe now with everything he says. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, after the whole situation with Denver and how it's panned out, and who can forget the "Let's Ride" clips that went viral? But yeah, you're right. Like, in all seriousness, we've had some great individuals that were African American that played in the NFL that have already paved a huge way and continue to do so as well. I mean, especially what we saw with Patrick Mahomes being in the Super Bowl now numerous years, and we've been having the matchup with him and Jalen Hurts, which I think was really significant as well. But I mean, Russell Wilson has had his impact as well. But I don't know about pioneer though. It felt a little bit too much for me, for my liking.
Yeah,
just me.
All right, last thing here, and before I get to this last thing, because I know we're going to want to transition and keep going. If we ever have, like, while we're live, for those that are listening live, if ever we are having some audio issues, I'll always fix those before it goes up on the podcast. So
right,
for those that are just listening right now via podcast, I'm saying this because we had some audio situations happen a couple minutes ago. So it's been one of those days today. But all righty, here we go. Jared Goff does not like the negative attention around Detroit, and especially the Detroit media, even with the Lions being one of the best teams in the NFL. He says, quote, "I have this thing with our local media where, like, they almost like relish in negativity at times. And maybe that's what gets clicks and that's what sells, but it's no longer what they need to live in. Like, hey, guys, we have a good team. We've had success. We can be happy about, we can celebrate and not have to write about how we're constantly the underdog." So I think this is just Jared Goff basically saying we're not always the underdog anymore. Like, he believes they're at the top, which I think in their own division, yeah, I think the Lions are on top in their own division. In the NFC, we'll start with top five. I think they could be top five at five.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there's 100% four teams above them because AFC, is definitely closer. Let's do that. Let's kind of talk this out real quick. Let's go from 1 to 5, who we think the best teams in the NFC are. So
we got San Francisco.
NFC, number 1, you're saying number 1? Number 1 is San
I'm going to say
Francisco?
Philadelphia. That's just my bias. I'm going to go with Philly.
I think Philadelphia is number 1 too. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going with Philadelphia.
So.
But if we were just naming with
and that's not even, it doesn't even have to just be bias. Like, look at the Eagles offense. They've got new coordinator on offense, and they got Vic Fangio now with the defense. They just got Saquon Barkley. And yes, they have lost Jason Kelce, unfortunate. But the rest of the O-line is there. We still have Jurgens. Like, we still have a top O-line in the league. We've got great receivers. The defense is still so beefed up. Like, unless it's just such a terrible downfall as it was at the end of last season, which is only because it got to the point Jalen Hurts wouldn't even be in the meetings with the team anymore if the offensive coordinator was in there. So he wasn't having these pregame meetings with the team if the offensive coordinator was in there. I mean, that is terrible. So I believe that, and of course this can be debated with possibly the 49ers, but I do believe that the Eagles are number 1. Trying to be as unbiased as possible, I believe that the Eagles are number 1 in the NFC.
Okay, so then we have Philly, we have San Francisco.
Yeah, I would say.
Then that's where I was going to put Detroit. I was going to put Detroit 3. I really like Detroit a lot. Los Angeles for me starts to get interesting. Don't think they're see, because the thing is, the AFC is so much more stacked compared to the NFC as far as their top teams.
So I know that we're Philly fans, but trying to be as unbiased as possible, where are you putting Dallas? Are they even in your top 5?
Trying to name them right now, man. So we got Philadelphia, we got San Francisco. Those are the top. I think those two being interchangeable works for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then from 3 to 5, you can see, okay, I love Detroit.
This is Ivan's 3 to 5.
Here we go. You got Tampa Bay in there, but no. I mean, I guess you put Dallas at 4.
Okay.
I feel like I'm missing something. I mean, but it shows you that we didn't research this part of the show.
Right. This
And
is
then
just off the cuff.
Right, yeah, top of the dome. Man, yeah, and then 5. Oh my God, this is probably the worst NFC list I can think of top of my head. Okay, so here we go. Philly, San Francisco, Detroit, Dallas, and Los Angeles.
I like that. I would probably say, I think I would go Philly, then San Francisco, then Dallas, then probably
Right?
Yeah, then I would probably go there's probably someone listening right now going,
Oh, you know
idiot,
what?
why didn't you say this team?
I was thinking Green Bay too. I don't know why I forgot about them.
Oh man, Green Bay. Yeah, they gotta they gotta be in the top 5, don't they?
Because they got a pretty good defense too.
Well, because if we look at so Eagles, and we'll go division here. Eagles, Dallas, they're in the top 5. Giants are not, Commanders are not.
Nope.
Okay,
Next.
Detroit is, Green Bay can be, Vikings no, and
Bears no.
Bears no. Okay, so then you got
the South.
Seattle.
Oh, okay, we'll go West.
Yeah, we'll go Seattle. No, we'll go Rams. Possibly.
Arizona.
No. Even though I do like me some, and we'll get to Kyler here in a little bit. We'll get to we'll get to Kyler here in a little bit, but
who's the other team in that?
So we'll say Seattle, no. We'll say Arizona, no. We'll say the Rams, yes. And then I would say definitely. Oh, yeah, to the 49ers. So 49ers. Man, I don't know why I was blanking there on the.
Yeah, out of brain part too.
Yeah, and then so then we got the South. So you got the Falcons with Kirk Cousins. I don't know.
Comfortably top 10, but I don't know about top 5.
Yeah. All right, NFC. I'm going Eagles. I'm going 49ers. I'm going Dallas. I'm going the Lions. And then, I'm probably putting Rams over Green Bay, but I think Rams and Green Bay are interchangeable.
Yeah, so, I'm there too.
Off the cuff, terrible rankings. We'll come back to this next week, and we'll try to have some better rankings for you. But that's all the news, man. That's all the news.
All right, very good. So yes, as you guys can see, a lot of fun there we're having with the news segment this morning. And yeah, so what we're going to do today is we have a fun video. So I actually created this. So Mr. Spencer had this idea. Oh, let me see if I can make it a little bit better so you guys can see it. Hold on, let me just remove ourselves from the stage, see if that helps out.
Oh, yeah.
So you saw it. We're doing a Would You Rather quarterback edition, and we have 2 scenarios that we're going to be going over. Spencer's the one that created this concoction, so I'm going to go ahead and read the list that he gave us to basically dissect, and we have 2 quarterbacks that we're going to specify. We're going to go over Kyler Murray as well as Kirk Cousins, and not only are we it's not just between those 2, but we have a list of quarterbacks that we've assigned for each quarterback, and we're going to decide whether or not we would rather have Kyler Murray, or said player on that list. So with that, let's go ahead and read the first one, and we'll do kind of a back and forth here, so that way we can kind of like blitz through it. So really quick, let me go ahead and pull up the list, and we got Kyler Murray versus the aforementioned Jared Goff. Spencer, who you got?
In Dynasty, yeah. So
in Dynasty, yes.
Yeah, I think I'm going to start here and go Kyler Murray. I think that, as we know, rushing is still king in fantasy, and we saw what he was able to do last season. Yes, it was very quickly coming back from injury, but even coming back from injury last year, we see that starting in week 10, which is where he came back, he had QB 13, QB 6, QB 9, QB 18, QB 19, QB 12, QB 4, and QB 14 finishes. And even during that time, so coming off the injury, he was having 33 rushing yards, 51 rushing yards, 49 rushing yards, 32 rushing yards, 33 rushing yards, and still throwing for around about 230 to 260 yards a game, and had 3 rushing touchdowns in that span. So that was right after this injury. So a full year and a half, I guess, removed. And the fact that we know they're going to go some big name receiver in this draft to help,
Right.
Of course, with this pass game. And they still got James Conner. I'm going to have to go Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I think it's the discussion. I think the discussion becomes more of a hard decision if we're talking about quarterback in the actual NFL. But fantasy, it becomes a little easier just because we see that despite Goff having the better weapons by far, he has Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Montgomery, Gibbs in the backfield, Jamison Williams still out there too. However, he's averaged 17 points a game. Whereas to your point, when Murray came back, he came back with, really just showcasing how the floor for a rushing quarterback is extremely high in fantasy. He averaged 19.7 points in those 8 games. And just as you said, he had 3 top 10 performances in that span. Whereas Goff averaged only 17 points throughout the entire season. So we're seeing already from a points per game basis, Murray already is the better option. And that was my selection as well. So let's go ahead and go to the next one. We have Deshaun Watson. I mean, I don't know about you, Spencer, but this one for me was pretty easy.
Yeah.
Watson just sucks, dude.
Man. Yeah. I'm not, last year once the draft was over, which is really when I start getting into doing a lot more mock drafts to really be able to focus on, which we're going to have one for Dynasty Wire as well. But for Daily Dynasty Show, which is after the NFL draft, is really when I start doing as many mock drafts as possible with the community. So it's real. It's not, I'm just sitting there with the computer and trying to get a gauge on for about a month and a half after the draft, really get a gauge on, okay, where are these players going? What are the values right now? So that by the middle of June is when I can roll out the draft guide, which is something that me and Ivan want to do for Dynasty Wire as well. So last year I was really seeing that, Deshaun Watson in 1 QB is going about round 9, round 10. And he was going pretty much the same round as guys like him, Geno Smith, Dak Prescott, and about Jared Goff. I think Jared Goff was a round later. But really being like, okay, these guys, this is a pool of 4 or 5 players that are pretty good value. Pretty much can't hit if you decided not going to go QB within the first 3 rounds because, as we know, 1 QB leagues, your top guys are going to go end of round 2, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. End of round 2, early round 3. Rest of the guys start going around round 5, round 6. Then round 9, round 10, round 11, round 12, round 13. That's about where the majority of the rest of them go. And Deshaun Watson being round 9, maybe round 10 if you were lucky, was a pretty good value. Hated it. Absolutely hated it if you went with that advice. Now, of course, I gave the same advice for guys like Dak Prescott and Jared Goff and Geno Smith in that same pool of players. But, man, Deshaun Watson – I don't care that he's got the big contract. I said last week, and I've said this numerous times in different videos, that in Dynasty, guys at that age, right? You're not on your first contract anymore. Guys at that age, the 2 things you're looking for in Dynasty going forward is skill and or a big contract. Skill being the biggest one. If you have a big contract with no skill, doesn't matter in Dynasty. If you've got the skill but not a big contract, maybe you're at the end of your rookie draft or rookie deal, or you're at the end of that that second contract you got, we can still have hope and have almost reassurance that with this next 1 to 2 years you have left on this contract, you're still going to ball out. So, of course, the 2 things being simultaneous, you've got the skill and you just got a big contract. Now you feel very happy. But Deshaun Watson is the case of big contract, the skill. Man, it's sad to see him going from QB5 3 years in a row to only being a year removed from the game season-wise, coming back and just even when fully healthy, or at least as healthy as they're, providing us information-wise, he's not good. Like, he's not good.
So I agree. Yeah, and that was Yeah. My take was just as simple as that. I put my first words I put on our notes was easy. Watson sucks. And of course,
Yeah.
it doesn't help too that he had the shoulder injury to end the year. And yeah, you're right. I actually made a video last season saying that if you draft Watson, you can potentially get him for some good value because the community really wasn't valuing him too high.
Yeah.
But in the context of Dynasty, unfortunately, he just hasn't panned out. And I mean, yeah, he's just, for me, he's just a mediocre option right now at the quarterback position. Even in Superflex leagues, I would feel much better with the second
Superflex,
QB
he was
option.
going. I remember in Superflex last year, he was going round 3, maybe early round 4, which still is a value in Superflex. Because if you're looking at your second QB, a player like Deshaun Watson, quote unquote, this is quote unquote
Right.
the player like Deshaun Watson, you can get end of round 3 or early round 4 that turn there. So
Sure.
let's say you had the 101 pick, you're going to have let's say you had the 112. Let's say you had the 112. You'll have
Sure.
the 312 and the 401. So let's say at 112 you decided, I'll go, which I don't think this will happen this year, but last year you may have been able to get a Dak Prescott at 112. And then maybe you don't go another quarterback until the 401 because you think,
Right.
okay, well, at 201, we'll just go top receiver. At 312, we'll go either another top receiver, or if a big name running back has fallen, maybe I can get him. You were able to get Wild. You were able to get, even in Superflex, you were able to get Jonathan Taylor that late because of the contract and the injury situation last offseason.
Right.
So maybe you would have gotten Dak Prescott, a Devonta Smith or an AJ Brown at 201, and then you were able to get a Jonathan Taylor, 312, and Deshaun Watson 401. You're sitting there going, my goodness, give me the championship. I've already won. And Deshaun Watson in Dynasty at this point, in my opinion, I think you just need to trade him for whatever you can get. So
Right. Yeah,
trade
unfortunately,
him for
pennies on the
whatever
dollar.
you can get.
Yep. All right, cool. So next one we're going to go with is going to be Trevor Lawrence. And this one for me was a little bit tougher. And here's why. Because we thought we were going to see the year 3 emergence that we've seen from different quarterbacks. And Trevor Lawrence has the skill set. But here's the thing. His ending of the season last year gave you more optimism. So for me, he ended from week 11 to the rest of the season. He was a QB7 on a points per game basis. And we were thinking, okay, he has Doug Peterson, right? He already has strong rapport with Christian Kirk. We thought Calvin Ridley was going to do more. We still saw the pretty good connection with Evan Ingram. And then you obviously saw Travis Etienne be phenomenal for this offense. But when you're now comparing it to that of Kyler Murray, we went back to the floor. For me, dude, this one was a toss-up. This one was literally a coin toss where I wouldn't look at you sideways for either one. Or if you said, oh, I'll take Trevor, I'll take Kyler. But gun to my head, I think – hold on. This kind of reminds me of our top 5 list we just had. Hold on. Give me a second.
This one is tough, man. This one's tough.
Okay, screw it. I'm going to go with my gut. I'm going to go ahead just because I believe in the coaching staff of Doug Peterson, being that he's won a Super Bowl. I'm going to go Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah. Yeah, not a terrible pick there. I think before we were to get to the Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence question, let's ask this and see if this is any easier. Trevor Lawrence or Jared Goff?
Oh, I don't know. I'll go Trevor because we're talking about a dynasty here. I'm going to go Trevor.
Yeah. Even though Jared Goff's about to get this contract. But so is Trevor Lawrence, right? So is Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence only 24 years old. And even if he finishes the way he did last year, even if he finishes outside QB10, which obviously this doesn't, finishing outside QB10 in fantasy will not translate to how big his NFL contract is. That's not what I'm saying. But statistically, even if he finished outside QB10, he's still going to get a massive contract. Like the Jaguars, this is their guy. Like they're not letting go of this guy. So
yeah, absolutely.
He's in a good spot. He's getting that contract regardless, which we love. And he does have the talent, right? Last year was a weird year because we saw the year 2 breakout. QB8 finish in year 2, over 4,000 passing yards, 25 touchdowns passing, 8 interceptions, 5 rushing touchdowns, so 30 total touchdowns. And of course, he had the nearly 300 rushing yards in 22, but then he had 339 rushing yards in 2023. So along with the over 4,000 passing yards, 21 touchdowns passing, 4 touchdowns rushing. So I do think that this one is a lot closer than the two previous. Man, this one is tough because, I don't have to necessarily worry about the injury of Trevor Lawrence like I would with Kyler Murray. Now, Kyler Murray, though, he is going to give me that rushing upside that Trevor Lawrence will not. And I would have a lot more. I don't know, actually. Hold on now before I say that. In fact, check myself here.
Yeah, because even his rushing yards.
Well, I was going to say I could have a lot more trade value trading Kyler Murray away because of his rushing. But I don't know if that's necessarily true because, number one, he's already got the contract.
Right.
He's got 2 years now of injury-riddled seasons. And even though he is coming back fully healthy, and we might get – I believe we're about to get that top 8 version of – top 6 for fantasy version of Kyler Murray again. I think that's what we're about to start seeing. The issue for me in this situation does go back to because, Trevor Lawrence, even last year, had those weeks where he would run for 42 yards, 41 yards, 59 yards, 31 yards. Now, that's not normal for him. But getting close to the goal line, in week 11, he had 2 rushing touchdowns and 2 passing touchdowns. That week alone, he had almost 40 points and was QB1 on the week. He's not doing that every week, but the fact that is there, and of course, the Jaguars struggled last year for whatever reason. They were not getting it together on offense or defense. Because the weeks that the offense were clicking, the defense was not. The weeks that the defense was stopping, the offense couldn't get it together. So just a weird season, but if I know for a fact I can get this top 8 season of Trevor Lawrence. Now, Trevor Lawrence to me is never going to be a guy. And I think this is – all right, I think I have my decision based off of what I'm going to say.
Okay, let's hear
Trevor Lawrence is never going to be a guy that can finish top 3 consistently. He's just not that guy, I don't think, for fantasy football. I think he is at top 10, yes.
Yeah.
QB5, probably the ceiling.
Yep.
And that's fine. 5 to 10. If I know I'm getting that for the next 4 to 5 years in Dynasty,
it's not bad.
I'm set. The risk you run with Kyler, of course, is the injury, but Kyler has that ability to be a top 3 running back, to be a top 3 quarterback in Dynasty.
Right.
And we've seen it already. He finished QB3 in 2020. Now, so with all that being said, if I want to run the risk of a higher fantasy finish, I'm going with Kyler Murray. If in Dynasty I want the consistency and the healthy and the safe floor, because the floor could be nasty with Kyler Murray.
Right.
I would go Trevor Lawrence. So with that being said, I like to go risky sometimes in other positions, but with my quarterback, especially in Dynasty, I want to have a safe, I made a good decision, and I'm going to go Trevor Lawrence on that one. Lawrence on that one.
Yeah, and just really quick, I was going to read you the last 3 seasons. Murray has played 8 games, 2022, 11 games, 2021, 14, whereas I'm with Lawrence, 17 games, 16. So you're getting more of a stable quarterback injury-wise, but then you're also getting in 2020 for Murray, top 3 finish, 2021, top 4 finish. So that's kind of like the take one or the other kind of thing, but not an easy decision whatsoever. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. We got now the last one for this situation. No, sorry, we have 2 more for the Kyler Murray. Would you rather? It's going to be Brock Purdy or Kyler Murray. Now, this one for me was a little easier, not because we don't think that Brock Purdy is not good. I think he's proved he is a solid quarterback for the NFL. And Brock Purdy even had a good stretch from week 10 to week 15. He had a 6-game stretch where he had 5 games where he was a top 6 quarterback in fantasy football. And this is with him not having that rushing upside that we see with Murray. So for me, just to make it brief, just to make it simple, I'm going Murray. Of course, I think the scenario is better for Brock Purdy, but I think this is more, not saying that he's a system quarterback, but I don't think that's necessarily also a bad thing. But I think that the system that Brock Purdy in caters to a better floor for him as far as the style that he goes with, but overall fantasy floor that goes to Kyler Murray, and he's done it even with guys that aren't as talented, that are around him. And we see what happens. We still have to see what happens with Brandon Ayuk or I mean, and
Yeah.
if he will even have him back. And thankfully, CMC was healthy last season. I mean, I think all those weapons were actually relatively healthy for the most part last year, which boded well for Brock Purdy. It's just hard to really account for that each and every single season. So if I'm gonna just go player to player, for me, it's easy to go with Kyler over Brock Purdy.
Yeah, and mine's pretty quick on this one. It's Kyler Murray, and also because number one, he's got the contract, and I think both of them are fine options. But to me, until Brock Purdy gets that second contract, I'm still worried that, like, the moment something happens to Purdy, whether that be a massive injury, like, first of all, the commitment that they have to him money wise is so nothing that if something happens to him, week 3 of next season, they end up having a top 3 pick next year's draft. And let's say the injury is, I mean, it's pretty severe, then I don't know, man. I think that it's going to be, I'm not saying that they're going to move on from Purdy. All I'm saying is that the Cardinals are a lot more invested in Kyler. So to me, this was just easy that if anything were to happen to Kyler, I know that they've still got him. If anything severe were to happen to Purdy and the Cards lined up, I mean, look at the Cardinals right now. Cards lined up. They got a top 4 pick. They're not going quarterback, right? They're not trading Kyler Murray for a receiver to then go get a quarterback. It's not happening.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, Murray for me.
That's a good take too. I didn't even factor in the contract, but I think that's a really good one. And for me, this one was very interesting. And I actually had to look in the numbers a little bit deeper. And this one was Justin Herbert versus Kyler Murray. And now we can't even use like the floor conversation because Herbert can also provide some upside with his rushing ability. But this dude is just so good in general. I just love Justin Herbert. And especially because he was one of my buy low guys last week. So, and if you watch that video yet, is up on YouTube as well as our podcast, where we were talking about some buy or sell options. And for me, Herbert, you have the age, you have the raw talent, and that's what really did it for me. And the first 10 games of the season, I didn't know how hot he got off to the start last year. He had 7 games where he was a top 8 quarterback. When you go on Sleeper, there's this cool thing where you can see like the game logs. All you saw was green to kick things off for Justin Herbert. This guy's just phenomenal. And I was thinking, wait, this guy, I mean, yeah, he had Keenan Allen do really well, but outside of that, Austin Eckler wasn't all that great. But I'm just a big fan of how Herbert is able to bridge the gap for any lack of talent. And because of that, because of the age, and going back to your thing, he has the skill. He has a contract too, doesn't he? As well,
just got it.
Yeah, so he's set for me. He's locked in for me. Easy Herbert.
Yeah, to me, this one's Herbert as well because, look, we've seen the first 3 years of Herbert's career, the defense pretty much allowing almost the same amount of points as the offense. So it doesn't matter what Herbert's doing. It doesn't matter if he has 4,400 yards year 1. Doesn't matter if he has over 5,000 yards year 2. Doesn't matter if he almost has 5,000 yards again year 3. He's not going to be able. I mean, he had he was 180 yards short year 3 of also another total of 5,000 yards. So it doesn't matter what he's doing on offense. The defense has just been, and that's all changing. That's all changing going forward. And I love Justin Herbert. I love Kyler Murray as well, but Justin Herbert only 26 plus he's got the size of the quarterbacks that I personally, 6'6", 236, and he's got that running ability. Now, 234 yards year 1, 302 yards year 2. It's not like he's Jalen Hurts up there, but it's also not like he's Tom Brady running the ball. Like Justin Herbert is incredible. And I think that we said it, I believe last week, may have been the week before. He's one of those QBs. He's not Patrick Mahomes, but he's one of those QBs like Josh Allen, like Patrick Mahomes, that can overcome the circumstance and that can develop those receivers, which only makes it worse for Quentin Johnston. But on how much he sucks. But yeah, to me, it's Justin Herbert.
All right, cool. So now let's go ahead and quickly transition over to Kirk Cousins. Now this one will be a little bit faster. So go ahead and give me your take between Kirk Cousins and Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, so I'm going to go. I know that both of them just got the contract, and they're both in pretty good situations. Baker Mayfield got to keep Mike Evans, and he's got Chris Godwin, and he's got Rashad White. He's got White, but Kirk Cousins just landed in an incredible spot. Both of them Kirk Cousins is only guaranteed one more year than Baker. Here's the thing. I think that the offensive coordinator that made Baker what he was this past year, which is the same offensive coordinator that made Geno what he was the year prior, and we saw what happened when he left and went to Tampa Bay. Geno kind of dropped down a little bit. Baker Mayfield, I don't know. I'm not going to say for sure he's going to drop off, but now that coordinator is gone, then, or maybe it was just QB coach, but either way, he's went to Carolina. That does make me nervous. Kirk Cousins has been able to overcome a lot of circumstances for fantasy. For the NFL, we've seen that it hasn't been too much, but all that to say that while this one might seem like it's closer than it actually is, give me Kirk Cousins. I believe the weapons around him are much better. He's guaranteed one extra year than Baker is. And of course, he's talented for fantasy football. So top 12 guy, and sometimes, top 10 guy consistently. So give me Kirk Cousins.
Right. Yeah. For me, it was going to be Cousins, and very similar to the situation that we spoke about a few weeks back when we were going over quarterbacks. And for me, I just have a hard time thinking that Baker Mayfield is going to be able to replicate what he did last season, because last year he had career highs in passing yards, completion percentage, yards per attempt, and passing touchdowns. And then both of these guys just came off getting 2 contracts, right? Well, I mean, each one getting their own contract. And so now I'm going to just size it up with, okay, what's the talent going to be there around him? What's the system? And I think that is easily going to be in Cousins' favor. Both of these guys aren't necessarily spring chickens, so they're not really young. So I'm going to go with the one that has better options, being that the talent around Cousins is a lot younger, and also has a lot of talent too, with Drake London, Pitts, Bijan there. Pretty good infrastructure there for a good dynasty option at the quarterback position.
Yep, I agree.
All right. So these are going to be pretty interesting, these next two. And we have Will Levis or Bryce Young going up against Cousins. So let's go and kick it off with Levis. Who you got, Levis or Mr. Cousins?
I'm going to go Cousins just because the verdict is still out on Levis. Although I like Levis. I believe in him. I think that they have done everything that they possibly can, and they're not going QB. They haven't went out and got a big name in free agency or traded for when they were able to. They've done everything they can to surround Will Levis, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Tony Pollard, done everything they can to surround him with weapons. And I think that he's got a cannon of an arm. He runs and doesn't care to truck these linebackers or any other player trying to go after him. So he definitely likes to get physical. It's just the accuracy issues, which anytime someone's got everything I just mentioned good about them, but accuracy is the issue, you're always going to want to correlate it, kind of be like, oh, yeah, that was Josh Allen. I don't know if he'll be Josh Allen. What I do know is he spends too much time in the pocket. He takes way too long to let the ball go, and he takes unnecessary risks. So I'm going to say Kirk Cousins. And let's not forget that Kirk Cousins, before going down last year, was on pace not only to have an MVP season, but have the best year of his career at age 35. So I'm still going to go Kirk Cousins on that one.
Yeah, and for me, same thing. I mean, Will Levis, though, showed he has a cannon. This guy can throw the ball. I mean, that first game he had where was it 4 touchdowns that he threw? Yep. So I think you're right. The verdict is overall still out on Levis. I think he's tougher than our next one. So actually, just real quick, I'm going to go with Levis. But I think he's a tougher decision, believe it or not, compared to the next guy, which is Bryce Young. Who you got, Bryce Young or Kirk O'Chains?
I agree. I'm going to go Cousins because I think that, Bryce Young, to me, I think his ceiling in fantasy could be maybe QB 10. I don't think that even with that QB whisperer that's now there as head coach that made Baker what he was last year, that made Geno what he was the year before, I think he'll definitely help Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young will look a lot better. They're definitely going to have to do whatever they can to help beef. I mean, they've got Deontay Johnson, they've got Adam Thielen and Jonathan Mingo and Miles Sanders and these guys, but I don't know, man. I think that they've got another year or two of building around him before that offense is good enough to help elevate him, because he's not one of those guys that's going to overcome circumstances. So, I just, Cousins, it's easy.
Isn't it crazy how just this time last year, this conversation would have been entirely different? We would have had Bryce Young easily over Kirk Cousins. And it's because we thought, okay, this is going to be the number one overall pick. And he's in a good situation, what we thought.
The number one before the trade happened, the number one overall pick to the Bears with DJ Moore and with Cole Kmet and with these guys. So before the trade, yeah, these are things that we thought, but
it just hasn't panned out. And it's crazy. We said this earlier when we were talking about Carson Wentz and Jared Goff. The NFL is just so crazy how things can just pan out. All right, cool. So I'm going to go with also Cousins. Same thing. This is pretty easy. We need to see what's going to happen there with Young, even though we are rooting for him and do believe that he could turn it around. This one was actually more interesting because I think this guy is more established, obviously. And it's going to be Tua Tagovailoa and Kirk Cousins. And for me, man, I think what makes it harder is that they have Tyreek Hill. So this is where we're now the whole talent situation can get negated because both teams have great talent around their quarterback. You obviously have Jalen Waddle, you have Tyreek Hill, and that's all that matters because you have obviously some solid running backs there with Devon Achane, and then you also have Raheem Mostert still. So now this whole talent argument can't be utilized. Now it comes down to, okay, who do you think is going to just be the better quarterback? And this is where the concern with the Achilles now comes to play for me. So I'm going to go with the healthier option right now, which I'm going to go with Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah. So this one at first to me was a lot easier than when I started looking at like some numbers, but it's still somewhat easy of a choice to me. I also am going Tua. I believe that not only the weapons around him, like you mentioned, but also too, my belief of Tua is that and of course we can't know this, but as long as he stays healthy, he is top 5, arguably top 3, but definitely top 5 most accurate passers in the NFL. He's incredibly accurate. He's got a good arm, not as necessarily mobile as I think a lot of people would love because, he's only reached 100 yards in his 4 seasons. He's reached 100 yards twice and barely. 109 rushing yards year 1, 128 rushing yards year 2. And if last year is going to be, which was his best season so far, a QB9 finish, over 4,600 passing yards, if this is what we're going to see out of this offense, where the rushing comes from the other speed guys on the team, whether that be Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle getting a couple rushes in there. And then, of course, the running backs, Devon Achane and what have you. If the speed is going to come from Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane and the occasional Jeff Wilson, if he's even still going to be there, but like I said, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Tua had 74 rushing yards. So we can't even say that because of his rushing that also helps go over Kirk because it's not like he's rushing more than Kirk is. He's barely running out there. For Tua, his rushing is an emergency. It is not a first or second option, third or fourth, fifth option. It is emergency. So to me, this comes down to weapons and passing and health.
Right.
And of course, their age and dynasty. So if I'm looking at Tua, if he has another year like he just did and he at least plays, like if he can at least play 15, 16 of these games, maybe only miss 1 or 2 because of injury. Last year, he played all 17.
Right.
But if we can get that again, he's about to get a big contract from the Dolphins. So, in my opinion, give me Tua. Give me Tua.
Yeah, this one was a lot. Yeah, this one was a lot easier. But then again, it was also because these guys both are in good situations. So we expect both of these guys to be good in dynasty. A lot of this wasn't, we don't want the other option if we choose the other. So yeah, very interesting conversation. We're going to now continue this trend now. We have this topic now. It's going to be, would you rather for the next coming weeks? So we're going to be going over running backs and then go over wide receivers, or was it the other way around? I forget.
And we'll do running backs next week. We'll kind of just come up with a couple running backs and then list about 4 or 5 that are in their range value-wise. Right. And then kind of would you rather, which one of those, and then wide receiver the next week, tight end the next week, and then who knows, maybe bring it back around and pick a couple different QBs and running backs, the following week. So
yeah, and kind of see right. Yeah. And, I think that this is such a helpful tool because that way you can then now utilize and get ready to see how do you want to prepare for your upcoming dynasty drafts, especially if you're doing a startup. How should you plan on these accordingly? Because it's different than when you do redraft for sure. So, all right, cool. Let's go ahead and get ready to land this plane. We're going to now dive into the verse of the week. And Spencer, if you don't mind, I would love to kick it off first, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, man. ahead. Mine's pretty quick, so
Oh, go for it. Okay.
Well, that wasn't me to say, but for me to kick it off.
Okay.
But yeah, so mine's pretty quick here, but mine comes from James. It's James 1:19. This is from the New King James Version. So James 1:19 says, "So then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath." Also, other versions could be slow to anger. And me and you actually a few weeks ago, I was walking around and we were kind of just talking on the phone, and we were kind of talking about like how sometimes at home, me with my wife, you with yours, just how certain little things sometimes, can press our buttons and really just get us there. And with getting aggravated really quickly or getting mad really quickly, where with other people maybe we would be a little slower than to the ones that we're closer with. And it's like, I know that I personally struggle with that sometimes, where it's like just blink of an eye sometimes can get super aggravated about something that's so dumb, really, in the grand scheme. And that's something that we have to really pray for, that strength and that wisdom, from God, to really help us to be slow to anger, and to really sometimes that's why, in my opinion, I believe that's why that part of the verse is last. Let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Because I think if you really are sitting there and you're just listening to what's happening, right? If you're really listening, whether that be the trash, the dishes, mowing the yard, whatever that is, you and your significant other, or if it's somebody at work, something you may not have gotten done fast enough. What are they saying to me? Now, is it out of line? Am I really digesting this? And is it out of line and I need to respectfully respond to this person? Or did I really mess up because I decided to sit down and watch TV for a little bit instead of doing the dishes like I needed to, or something like that? Like, let me soak this in, and let me come back to this with love, and let me come back to this with, you know, what am I bringing to the table here? That way, instead of being quick to anger and then also being quick to speaking, right? Because I'm so angry now, I'm just going to pop off. I think that is something we need from God. Like, we need that wisdom to be to listen and not be so quick with our anger or our speech, right? Saying yes to things when maybe we should have sat down and thought about it, and maybe saying no, or saying no to things when we probably could have sat and thought about it and then said yes. So I just thought that verse really applied to especially what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, James 1:19. "So then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath," or slow to anger.
Good stuff, man. Yeah, and I just love your transparency too with that. And that's really the goal of why we want to share this, because we want to draw things that we're not only taking in as well as wanting to share as far as encouragement, but also things that we are using as encouragement to help us walk within our own lives. And actually, with that, mine is very similar to yours, man. And mine comes from Galatians chapter 6, verse number 4. And it reads like this. It reads, "But let each one test his own work, and then his reason to boast will be in himself alone and not in his neighbor, for each one will have to bear his own load." And the reason why I thought this one was important was because I just love the challenge that we get now to look within ourselves, to test ourselves, to examine ourselves. I'm so big on self-awareness, and I think a lot of the issues that really root from, even like you said too, Spencer, when it comes to marital situations, comes down to really pride. And I think that when we are able to examine ourselves and to bear our own load, as opposed to thinking, oh no, it was this circumstance, or it's because she knows that if she says this, it gets me ticked off, or if this situation didn't play out the way it did, then I would have not reacted. All of it is now us deflecting and not us really examining. And I think that when we examine, that's why I love that verse where it says we now have no reason to boast within ourselves, because when we look within ourselves and think, man, you know what, I can be pretty crappy because I get so impatient, or I get so quick to speak and not slow to listen, And I think that those things really help give us the opportunity to really look within ourselves and think, you know what? I am just as flawed as this circumstance. I got to slow down, and I got to remember that no person is perfect, no situation is perfect, and because of that, I need to make sure that I'm examining myself as well. Because guess what, I'm also imperfect as well. But I think that points back to a much more important and much more freeing, situation, is that we don't have to thankfully rely on our own doing to help us out in those situations, but it is through the Holy Spirit now that empowers us, that gives us that strength to remind us that, you know what, because we are flawed, we need a savior to help us out. And because we are flawed, we have an example that we can point back to really help us out in those situations.
Yeah, man. I really like how, you kind of tied that part in of when you think about it afterwards, right? When you think about it of like, oh man, I shouldn't have said that to her,
Right.
like whatever it is that she's not coming to me because she wants to piss me off. Like she's not coming to me because she just wants to make me mad. That's not what she's doing. She only asked me to do the dishes already twice, or we already made the deal that, I'll take the trash out every day, or I'll do the dishes every day, or she'll do the laundry every day. Now, something that I do think about, like you said, is I hate that feeling of, ah, dang it, I shouldn't have said that, because it's already been said, right?
Right.
Like, dang it, man, like it's already been said. If I would have just sat, and just thought about it, just listen to what she's saying. You're right.
Right.
My bad. Right.
Right.
And there are times where she's saying something and it's, hold on a minute. Like I already did XYZ, it's like, I don't, there are some times where it's, maybe she's just having a bad day, and because she
Right.
can't take it out on a coworker, she's going to bring it home, and y'all need to kind of talk about it and be like, you know what? I recognize you're having a bad day. Like, let's talk about it together, but let's not have you're mad at Samantha. So now I'm Samantha and you're going to treat me like I'm Samantha. Let's talk about it as in I'm your husband, and I don't need to do the same thing. Roger
Right.
really made me mad. You're not Roger, right? I'm bringing you these things, but I think that especially as the man of the house, like we need to have more patience with our wives.
Right.
And we really need to think about those things because I hate that feeling, man. I don't want to have that feeling of shouldn't have said that one.
Right.
Great point.
Right.
Man.
And
I like that.
yeah, man. You know what, too? Just one little point. The wives will notice when we're really trying. And I think it's just remembering. I told my wife, too, there's this quote from the very deep, very philosophical movie, Batman versus Superman, where Alfred is warning Bruce Wayne, Superman is not your enemy. You want to go to war with this guy. And then I was thinking about it. Strangely enough, this is how the Holy Spirit works, man. That's right. He spoke to me saying, your wife is not your enemy. Like, you don't go to war with her. Like, this is not your enemy. Your enemy is everything else that is trying to hurt your marriage. So when I saw that, I'm like, oh, wow, let me filter that now. Let me examine that now.
Satan really does want to attack more than anything marriages, more than anything a strong household. And what you just said, the wives recognizing that you're trying, man, that's so true. And what feels better? What feels better, right? Doing the stuff because number one, you love your wife and you want where you're living or the car or the yard, whatever it is, you want these things to look nice. But what feels better? Doing all these things to help and then her to say, hey, thank you for doing that.
Right.
Or you got your 20 minutes in front of the TV instead of doing everything, or you got your 20 minutes watching TikTok, or you got your 20 minutes playing the guitar, or you got your 20 minutes doing something else when it could have been 20 minutes doing the dishes, what have you. But yeah, man, great stuff.
Right. Good stuff. All right, guys. Well, hey, thank you so much for listening. That is going to do it for our podcast. As we said, we are going to be doing more of this fun stuff when it comes to what we're going to be discussing as far as would you rather. So be sure to tune in for that. And as always, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe, hit that follow button on our Apple podcast. Please leave us a review as well. And Mr. Spencer, as we land the plane, please let the audience know where they can tune in on the social media platforms.
Absolutely, man. Dynasty Wire on Instagram, Dynasty Wire on TikTok, The Dynasty Wire on X, artist formerly known as Twitter. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the podcast on Apple and Spotify so that you'll be notified, and make sure you have those notifications turned on when we upload. We've now got music on the podcast version, so you'll be able to hear that at the beginning and at the end. And man, just make sure you follow and subscribe to all that stuff so you will be ready.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So with that, thank you so much for tuning in. We pray that you guys have a wonderful rest of your week, and we will see you guys in the next episode.
Yep. See you.